So yeah, welcome everybody who's tuning in to the live recording of the podcast. Per usual, this is our pre-show. We start usually around 8 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time over on twitch.tv/4Player Podcast. What's up, Bring Daracus? So yeah, quick shout out to everyone watching us live. We appreciate you tuning in. We're going to be recording episode 736 here shortly. But first, we're going to answer a couple questions from our community. Literally a couple tonight. Only got two, so I do want to reiterate, guys, we're always looking for questions.
If we see like a really dope question in chat, nothing's stopping us from answering.
No, you're right. You're right. Nothing is stopping us from other than the fact that we don't have an overlay for it, which I don't think people really care about that. That's fine. So if anybody has a dope ass question in chat, we'll grab
overlays. There's overlays for the questions. Okay.
But you know, whatever. We'll focus on the ones that we have overlays for, and then if we have time, we'll jump in and answer some questions from chat if there are any. But I do want to take this opportunity to remind you that if you do have a question for us, you can drop us a line in Discord at discord.gg/4player. There's a submit a question thread that I start every week for the upcoming show. You can drop it in there whenever it comes to mind. You can also leave us a comment on any of our podcast YouTube videos from the past week. You can leave us a comment on 4playernetwork.com. You can leave us a comment on Patreon, wherever you want to leave it, wherever you're most comfortable. I'll find it. But you know, you got to leave it there. Yeah, I guess it is. It is a bit of a threat. Ooh. So anyways, yeah, we got a couple questions. I also want to. This is going to come up with like the first question we have tonight. I do occasionally take liberties with some of these questions. The first one is slightly modified, and I'll explain why when you pull it up. So our first question tonight. What's up?
Say it's up.
Cool. Yeah, I'm looking. I'm watching. I'm paying attention. So Freyham asks our first question tonight. And Freyham, I do apologize ahead of time. I slightly modified your question. So this is the modified version, then I'll explain afterward. The modified question is, considering that there is going to be a huge wave of game remakes like The Witcher and Dead Space, would you rather have a good indie game that is a love letter to the original game's formula, or a direct remake from a AAA studio? And I modified this question because his original question was kind of leading. His original question was, let's see, how did he phrase it? Would you guys rather have a good indie game that is a love letter to the original game formula, or a bad remake from a AAA studio? So I kind of rephrased it. Like, of course, if it's
the bad remake, yes.
Well, I don't want a bad remake.
Yeah. Good game or bad game? We're gonna take the good game every time.
Wait, what is it? What I guess. What do you mean by indie love? I mean, like.
Well, here's an example.
What does this look like? What does it look like?
Here's a fresh example. Yeah. I'm playing Signalis right now, which I'm going to talk about on the podcast tonight. That is a love letter to Resident Evil / Silent Hill, but it is science fiction. It's a completely different setting. It's retro visuals. It's it's a love letter.
I know what you're saying. I mean, every fucking indie game that comes out's a love letter to some old shit that we're nostalgic for. What I'm asking is in this example, is the quote unquote love letter directly the IP? Like a love letter? Is he asking us if we'd like an indie developer to do a love letter to The Witcher in the Witcher universe?
No. I think it's like, would you rather someone make a Witcher-like?
So it's like good? It's like Boomer Shooter, or like a remake Boomer Shooter indie game, or like a remake of Doom 1?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Would you rather?
I mean, those are the entire industry is both of those things right now. Like, is literally like most of what we play are indie love letters and remakes.
That is true, but like, there's also a weird situation right now where we're getting two AAA games. One is a direct remake of Dead Space, and the other is a love letter to Dead Space made by the original creator of Dead Space. It's very strange, but it's also kind of like, I don't know how to feel about it.
See, what I was thinking was, or I don't know what got me thinking about. I know what got me thinking about this is all those Witcher projects that were announced weeks ago or a month ago or so, and one of them is a. Yeah, did we not talk about it on the show? I assumed it was.
I don't think
it came up on the show when I was gone, but
Well,
yeah,
the
there's like a
remake
whole
of
bunch.
The Witcher was announced last week.
We
but
talked
No,
about
no,
the
no. I'm talking
phrasing.
about a couple weeks before that. CD Projekt Red, announced like all these new, like, oh, there's going to be like 3 new Witcher games in this trilogy, and we have this indie dev,
Yeah, but
making
that
a
was
Witcher game, and this.
my only point is that wasn't weeks ago, Brad. I'm pretty sure that was months ago, like like 8 or 9 months ago or something. Because it's so
No,
far
no,
out
no,
of
no, no. So like one of the projects that were announced at that time. This was recent. This was post release of the anime. The Cyberpunk anime, which was so well received. I think it got gave some confidence to CD Projekt Red to kind of announce like. One of the games that they announced was a sequel to Cyberpunk, right? And then they announced like
Wait,
3
they
new
announced a
Witcher.
sequel to Cyberpunk?
Nick, this was a big news topic. You missed it
It's
all
not a
completely.
sequel. It's an expansion.
No. Okay.
Phantom Liberty is an expansion. It's not a sequel. It takes place in the middle of 2077.
The point is, one of the new Witcher projects that were announced is a Witcher game from the indie dev that made The Flame and the Flood. Have you heard of that indie game?
Mm-hmm.
Heard of it? Yes.
The Flame and the Flood, and like so that got me thinking. There's going to be like some weird, cool, like indie game take on The Witcher. Like I like that sort of thing. I don't know if that's what this question was kind of like.
No, I mean
grasping.
This question is more broad than that, but sure.
So let's
that's
actually spend some time directly answering the question instead of speculating stuff. I think if you think about it as generally a love letter is not going to be to another indie game. Probably it's probably going to be to a bigger game. And the quote problem with bigger AAA games is they have to answer to the man. There's somebody who's like, we have to have this, we have to have this, we have to have this, and sometimes that can sully a game, and oftentimes indie games
make them more predictable.
We don't have to answer to that. We're doing something because here's the things we loved about the original, and here are the things we think it could have done better, and they come out with that. So generally, those love letters end up being better, or at least on par. And so I think generally,
or at the very least, like just more interesting.
Sure.
Whether they end up being good or not. Like, here's a good example. I think it's gonna come up at least once tonight, maybe in my 4-player minute. But Atomic Heart got a release date today. Actually, it's coming out in February. That is an indie game that looks like a love letter to BioShock. And I am very excited about that. And I'm sitting here thinking, I know I know what you're gonna say, Crispy. Like,
no, you don't. You don't. Like the whole vocabulary of the conversation perplexes me. I can't like I don't know.
So
maybe
an indie game.
Maybe that's all it is.
Maybe
that's all it is. Maybe the whole industry just is love letters and remakes. I don't know.
At this point, you're not wrong.
That just sounds so fucking stupid. There's got to be a better way of saying that. Like,
well, and I mean, you can also liken it to the film industry too, and not. I mean, because
but
it's
even
at some point, as diminishing returns, you're going to get a lot more, quote unquote, unoriginal projects, and like the truly original idea feels like something that comes along once in a blue moon, which actually makes those things more special, I think.
For sure.
But the spirit of this question seems to be like a lot of indie developers spend their time. I mean, are obviously drawing inspiration from things that they loved growing up playing games. Like I talked about several indie horror games last week that I played that are upcoming, that are both very easily attributable to something like Silent Hill or PT, and it's just like, is that time well spent for an indie developer? I mean, I guess it kind of depends on who you ask, but like, it's also not an either or thing, right? Like you're not like we're talking about an indie developer versus a AAA developer. Like they're both going to be doing their own things. Like you're going to get both, one way or the other. I think if this question was more focused towards specifically indies or more specifically towards AAA, it would be a lot easier to approach. Because it's like, do you want to see AAA developers do remakes, or do you want to see them come up with new original ideas?
Well, the question was very clearly geared towards indie devs, because the person who asked the question obviously thinks that indie love letters are better than remakes.
Yeah, that's why I modified the question.
That's how they asked the question.
Fram.
Which I mean, I don't think it's wrong. I don't know. I think that is a more pointed conversation than this generalized like
objection, leading the witness.
I feel like a love
Just
letter comes
saying.
from like a
Fucking
place
poor.
of passion, and a remake comes from an boardroom.
But
And
like,
that's more-
I don't think that's accurate.
Remake
That's
is
not
for
fair.
money, is what I'm gonna say.
I mean, sure, but there's no. That also doesn't mean that passion can't exist alongside it.
I'm sure.
I mean, sure, I guess. I mean, the artist doing the models probably really likes doing the
Well, no,
models.
so I will. Hold on. I'll argue on Nick's side here that I am sure that the people working on it are passionate about what they do to an extent. But I think the counter argument is obviously the original game had a lot more passion because it was someone or someone's with very unique ideas and new. And there's I want to make this game so bad, and here's all these things and blah blah blah. And then it comes to the remake. It's like, hey, I'm going to take this great idea and just kind of make it run a little bit better, look a little bit nicer.
But I think also time is an important variable here, because I look at something like Resident Evil 2 remake, and there's no way you can tell me that game is just a lazy remake of Resident Evil 2.
Well, no one said lazy.
I know you didn't say lazy, but like the implication in the question is almost.
Oh, but Fraham did. He said bad remake.
Well, I think these days we're getting some that feel unnecessary, and remakes are exciting when the game's old and feels like it really needs it, but when they don't, it starts to feel like do something more exciting or original.
It's so but yeah, I guess it's so weird. I don't know. Like if this was a book and they were like, "Oh, we're coming out with a new edition of Lord of the Rings." I mean, well, that might be a big example, but like if they're like, "We're coming out with a new edition of this book," people would be like, "Okay, I guess that's just the book that's gonna be at fucking Barnes and Noble when I go buy my copy of Dune. It's gonna have a picture of Timothy Chalamet on it, and that sucks."
It will actually.
Yeah, and everyone I don't know. Which I get. Like I get, it's really like you are a fucking poser if you're reading a copy of Doom with a picture of Timothy Chalamet on it. You've had what 60 years to read that book, and you just now picked it up now that it's a fucking movie.
Look at this motherfucker.
No.
How far are you in?
I don't feel that way.
Chris?
I don't feel that way. I'm saying that is the prevalent mentality. Like that's the closest thing that books come to whatever the fuck this conversation is. Like I don't know.
I didn't think this question was going to be so hard to parse.
It's not hard to parse. It's just stupid.
I want to play the good thing. Hey! Before we move on to the next question, can I read this very brief article because people seem a little lost? No, this is just a little news blip from Polygon from
about
October.
The Witcher?
To defend
Some people seem
his cyberpunk.
No, there's nothing to defend. I read a fact and y'all didn't see the fact, and I don't blame y'all. That's why I'm going to deliver the fact.
I saw it. Now. I read it.
This is from Polygon. This is from October something. CD Projekt Red announced Tuesday that, in addition to previously announced Witcher sequel being developed via the Unreal Engine 5, a total of 4 further Witcher games is set to be released in the future. The first post The Witcher 3 game, now codenamed Polaris, will be followed by 2 more sequels as part of a trilogy. All 3 games will be delivered within a 6-year period after the release of the first. According to 2 additional Witcher games, codenamed Sirius and Canis Majoris, will be created by the Flame and the Flood developer, the Molasses Flood, and an unnamed external studio headed by quote-unquote experienced developers who have worked on past Witcher games, respectively. Not much is known about Sirius or Canis Majoris at the time. The former title is in the Witcher universe will feature multiplayer gameplay on top of a single-player experience, including a story-driven campaign with quests. The latter is described as a full-fledged Witcher game. There are several other studios that can fit the description of Canis Majoris developer, yada yada yada. Both games will be separate from the new Witcher saga that is set to begin release with the release of Polaris. In addition, CD Projekt Red announced a sequel to Cyberpunk 2077, separate from that expansion.
TLDR?
So the series, this is a news topic, I guess, that never came up in the podcast. So, I mean,
well, first of all, you said it happened. You said it happened in October. Probably happened while I was on vacation and we weren't recording any podcasts, and I wasn't paying super close attention to the news. So,
but so The Witcher stuff seems obvious. The indie development, like indie developer is kind of interesting. I'm kind of curious as to what that would be. The other game that they did after the Flame and the Flood was,
I mean,
that what was that game called? It was like a kind of a survival-y game. Anyways, isn't it kind of ballsy of CD Projekt Red to announce a sequel to CD Projekt? To Cyberpunk.
yeah, it's ballsy. The thing
yes
is,
and no. I would say the whole, I would say that
Great
especially in
follow.
the past like month or two, Cyberpunk 2077 has taken off like crazy.
The anime.
So many
You guys
more
have-
people are. No, I know the anime helped, but I'm saying the anime helped drive people back to the game that they had polished
Oh.
since its rocky release. No,
Dude.
I'm saying the game has been seeing
Hang
a
on.
lot more
I think
people
we've
playing.
turned-
It. What's
I
up?
think
Hang on.
Hmm?
The developer of the Flame and the Flood and Drake Hollow, Molasses Flood, is owned by CD Projekt.
Yeah, I mean that's not surprised if they're going to be working on Witcher.
No, they're not an indie studio. It's not an indie.
No,
It's
they
just
were.
this-
I guess they got bought.
it's
Well,
a smaller
they
studio.
were an indie studio,
But it's not an
They're
indie
even-
project.
They're not like a Polish company. I mean, they were purchased by.
Are they not?
No, they're like in Boston or some shit.
I
Where the,
I do think
Molasses
wherever
Flood.
that
Yeah, that makes
Molasses Flood was.
sense. That was that was Boston.
I do think we have turned the corner on Cyberpunk
Yeah,
a
Boston,
little bit.
Massachusetts.
We didn't turn the corner.
You turned the
excited?
corner.
No. They have not earned back. They didn't
Oh,
pull like
dude,
a No Man's Sky
no.
or anything.
No, I'm not saying.
Yeah.
You need to slow your roll. I'm just saying
I am
the general opinion of Cyberpunk 2077 from people who are playing it currently or recently is much more positive than it was last year or
Yeah,
whatever fucking year that came out.
Because those are the people who were willing to go back.
Yeah.
I'm willing to go back. I'm
Also,
actually quite excited to go back.
boys, don't get excited about the Witcher series because it's a multiplayer game.
I heard a
He's
whole
poking, you're poking fun.
No,
man.
I'm not poking fun. It's a multiplayer game.
No, I know, but you're poking fun at me, or I guess me, for the one who has
All
so
of you,
and
except
Brad.
for Nolan. Well, I guess
Yeah,
it's a little weird,
To a
and I
lesser
feel
extent.
like like CD Projekt Red loves when this shit happens. You've seen it happen to other things where you hear, word on the street is people are going back and they love it, but like I feel like the word on the street or whatever is like doing a lot of marketing for a game that a lot of people also are not going back to play, but everyone just sort of believes that, it's good now, I guess. I heard
I'm gonna play it, I'll
someone
report
kind of
back.
like put a line in the sand on a podcast
We're
recently,
all-
and he said, no,
I'm
I
dropping
went
a line
back
in
to
the sand right
Cyberpunk.
now because it's 8:30 and we need to
better.
move on.
We're
it
all
still
waiting
sucks.
for it to hit PlayStation Plus as a free game, and then we'll play it.
Everyone has it, right?
Nick,
picked it up on a
please
Steam
read
sale
the
so I
next
can play that.
question.
Nick
They just
traded
let
me.
fine.
people keep it.
Brad, I need your full undivided attention for this next question because this one's
A
this one's gonna be
doozer?
this one's gonna be maybe challenging. I
A
don't know.
real
Maybe I'm wrong.
boinker?
All right, what's the next question? We really veered off course on the last question. I'm sorry, Frame. Full Dark Gear from Discord asks, having recently played Inscription, I was struck with a thought. There are a lot of cool and memorable story twists in games, but I was wondering, what are some of your favorite gameplay/mechanic twists in games? Specifically ones that appeared later in the game.
Ooh, I got
Well,
first one pops to my mind is Stranger's Wrath. It's a little bit of a spoiler, but
Oh, yeah.
at some point in the game, you're a certain thing is revealed about that character, and after that thing is revealed, the way you kind of like control and play that game changes due to the nature of what is revealed about that character.
Man, as someone who played that game, I vaguely remember what you're talking about, but I don't remember the context, and I don't remember much. I just remember
It's
really
an old
enjoying
game.
that game.
He's a thief. He's a thief.
Oh, that's right.
Do you remember
That's
that?
right. That's what. Oh my god.
And,
I don't
and
know
then
anything about
after-
Oddworld. What's a Steve?
It's a
It's like a-
four-legged creature, and when so they knock his like poncho off or whatever the fuck, and they're like, he's a thief, which is a four-legged creature, and then after that happens, you're just like galloping around and shit.
You're like a goat
because you're
at
a
that point.
thief. Yeah, you're like a goat or something.
He's a goat bounty hunter? Wow.
I'm sorry.
That's pretty
I'm sorry
cool.
if we just ruined that game that came out.
Wow.
tw-
I was never
25
gonna
years
play
ago.
it.
You really should. If you want to borrow it, I have it on
Oddworld.
Switch.
Oddworld is for nerds and losers.
Hey, what do you think we are here, man? He did mention Inscription. That is a very, very good example.
That's such a
this
good one
exact
that people
thing.
wanted the game to not be what it is, and like wanted to just make a whole new game that was just what it was after that twist.
They
For
did.
sure.
Or no, before the twist.
Before
They
the
did that.
twist. Right.
They released
Okay. Oh, right.
He released a roguelike mode.
Yeah. Wild stuff.
You know what this question does make me realize, though? It makes me realize, God, I wish games did this more often.
No, it's more common. I mean, than you think.
Brothers, or Tale, two brothers.
Brothers, Tale, Two Sons.
Two brothers. Brothers, a Tale, Two Sons.
I'm trying to remember the context of what happens at
Well,
the end of that.
It's more
at the very
like
end, there's
it's
a thing
more
that
like
happens.
it's more like the story is accentuated by the mechanics. Something in the story changes and it recontextualizes how you have to interact with the main mechanic of the game.
Yeah.
Which is
Gotcha.
really a really interesting use of control and UI as a storytelling element.
What is the Red Eye trailer of video game mechanics?
No one said The Witness. No one's Tunic. Maybe you talk about Tunic. Like
Okay, well, no. So here's the thing, and here's
Fez?
the. Sorry, this is a little bit of a tangent. I apologize. This has come up in Discord a lot this week, talking about Tunic specific. Because people be like, "I'm playing Tunic. It's pretty good," and then people are like, "Tunic's pretty cool. I think I might put it down though." And I'm just like, guys, that just makes me want to stab pencils into my eyes because they're not walking the golden path. And God damn it.
You haven't been able to. You haven't shut up about this golden path since March.
Brad, you would understand if you fucking did it.
I know
man.
it's some like big fucking revelatory thing. I also know some people really hate the golden path. So but I'll get to it eventually.
But people keep talking about it like they're just waiting for that like a moment to happen. And I'm like, that is not what this is. It's not a moment. It's not a sudden shift in mechanics. It is a epiphany you have at some point in the game that completely recontextualizes the game for the rest of the experience.
Yeah, I know.
And it is not.
They pulled a Fez. But
and it is one of those things where it is something that you could completely miss. It is not pointed out to you at any particular moment. It's just something you have to kind of notice and like think about for a second. And then when you figure that thing out, the whole game is different. And I've never had before. Maybe I haven't played Fez, so I don't know for sure. But I would say Tunic is by far one of the best examples of this. But it is not a moment that happens later in the game. It is just a shift that happens when you piece a couple pieces of information together and then realize that you're looking at the whole game differently now.
What about games like Wonderful 101, where they're just constantly adding something new, like constantly changing? No two levels are exactly the same, and by the end of that game,
Takes Two.
Yeah, I'm
would be
going to say
another
It
good
Takes Two
example
is
of that.
another example of that, Crispy.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's totally fair.
Bog Noise in
the
chat.
whole game. You can't pick one, but the whole game.
Bog Noise in chat mentions one I was going to say, The Messenger. The halfway point where it switches from like an 8-bit side scroller to a 16-bit pseudo Metroidvania.
Yeah.
Played that does sound really fucking cool.
The Messenger
really
was
fucking
cool,
good, man.
and you guys were really mean about it back in the day.
They were.
The Messenger was
we were mean about it?
Yeah, I don't remember why, but it was one of those games. It was like Hyper Light Drifter, where like it was actually a pretty cool game, and you guys were like, nah, it looks too pretty.
I think that's happened. I think everyone who played the Messenger here liked it.
Somebody find the receipts.
Yeah,
they're out there.
I don't know. I remember it getting fucking
podcast. The receipts.
Find someone saying something mean about the Messenger, because I remember
if I was
that
down on anything, it would be that the actual like backtracky nature of when it does become a Metroidvania is not like that elegant. You know, it feels kind of like you're running through levels again, backwards and stuff. You know, but it's a good game for sure.
Also, real quick, we need to cut this because we got to actually record the podcast. But I want to mention this is not late game; it's more early game. Is a sudden shift, but it's still one of the most like mind blowing things. Metal Gear Solid 2, like the bait and switch that you kind of had there. Right, I don't even know if mechanically is the right. I mean, I'm sure
slightly the mechanics. The characters play slightly different from each other, so it changes a little bit. Yeah.
But like, I still remember just being like, I had a clear vision in my head of like what Metal Gear Solid 2 was going to be, and to see that completely just sidestepped when I played the final thing was so cool.
Did someone in chat say it? Brutal Legend?
Yeah, someone in chat mentioned
Oh,
Brutal
okay.
Legend.
Yeah,
But
But that was
the
one of those where most people fucking hated that.
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, I don't think you had to like it.
It says,
Also-
"What's your favorite?"
It says, favorite.
Well, like the level of twist craziness, I think, is part of.
I think we
what
can
makes
all
exciting.
agree that. I think
and
we
it
can all
says
agree
"cool and memorable."
I
It
think
is
that we
cool
can
and
all
memorable,
agree
even if
that-
it was
that-
flawed.
Most people didn't think that, but
I think we can all agree that Tunic is the best example of this. Let's wrap this up, guys. Thank you so much for submitting your questions. We're going to get to recording episode 736 now. Again, if you want to submit a question for next week, you know what to do. Discord, Patreon, YouTube. Get your question in before next Thursday, and we'll answer it on the pre-show next week. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. It's time to record a podcast. Good night.